In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use Microsoft Power BI to display your Sage 50 sales data on a map. But, I hear you say, my customer address data is rubbish. It's inconsistent and incomplete. How on earth could I show that on a map? Well, I'm guessing if you're watching this video that you're hoping there is a solution to this problem. And the good news is that there is. Because in simple terms, if your customer address data in Sage 50 is good enough for your postman to deliver a sales invoice or a parcel to your customer, it's also good enough for Power BI to display that data on a map, with some exceptions. And we'll touch on those as we go through this video. So what I'd like to do now is just take you through some visualizations of customer address data and sales data in Microsoft Power BI. This is Sage 50 data. And along the way, I will show you what I've done to enable this, these Sage 50 address records to be showed within Microsoft Power BI. The desktop we're looking at is Microsoft Power BI desktop. On my right, I have my Sage 50 data that I've pulled in using my Centigo BI data feed. And what I want to do is I want to show a map visualization, a list of customers, and a list of products looking at sales over the last 28 days. Now, before we went into this before I started this video, I added a report level filter from my dates table saying last 28 days is true. And I'm just going to use that consistently through the report. So there are three kinds of visualization supported in Microsoft Power BI for mapping. There's what's called the map visualization, which is the one we're going to use first. There is a filled map, which, as the name suggests, and it shows you filled areas such as countries or states or counties. And then there's also an option called the ArcGIS maps for Power BI, which has some interesting additional visualization options that you can use. We'll be taking a look at all three of these. But first we'll go in and we'll create a map visualization. So I've clicked on the map visualization option, and now I need to select what data I want to show in that. Now I've got a table here called customer addresses, and I'm going to add, and I've also got countries. I'm going to add country as a location, and I'm going to add addresses. Don't worry about that information that we're looking at on the map at the moment. It's going to sort itself out in a minute. And what I want to display is sales information. My sales information is in my sales invoice details table. And I'll drag that as the size of the button. And I will add margin percentage as a color saturation. Okay. So what we can see straight away is I've got a map. It's displaying country information. It's showing that I've got sales in the last 28 days in 3 countries, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, and in Canada. And I can see straight away that my sales in the United States are bigger because the size of this circle is bigger, but the margin is lower. And again, I can see from the tooltip, I've got a margin in the States of just under 15%, compared with the UK, where I have a margin of 25%. It's shaded darker. I want to add alongside this a table showing my customers and the sales. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add sales. And I'm going to add my customer name. I'm going to switch the order around, and I'm going to sort by sales value in the last 28 days. I can see I've done £367,000 worth of sales in the last 28 days across those 3 countries. Now, the other thing I want to do is I want to look at products as well. So I'm going to add another table, and I'm going to select, if I knew my alphabet correctly, I'd go straight to my products table. And let's add product. And let's also add sales information to the product. I could add things like margin as well, but I'm not going to show to do that just for the purposes of this demo. Now I just need to format that a bit better because I've got, sorry. Oh, sorry, I've lost my sales information. Oops. It's not a filter. I want to add it as a value and sort by bigger selling products first. A little bit more there. Okay. I'll just maximize the size of this chart. Okay. So what we have now is we've got a map visualization showing sales by country and by customer and by product. And I can, it's fully interactive. I can select a particular customer. I can see where that is on the map, and I can see the products bought by that customer. I can select a particular product. And I can see it's, in fact, it's the same customer that has bought that particular product over the last 28 days. But actually what I want to do, though, is I want to focus in on my sales in the United Kingdom only for the rest of this demonstration until we come on to the field map option. So I want to add a report level filter for country code. Contains GBR as the country code. Now there's a subtlety there that some of you might have noticed. And so now I've just zoomed in on the United Kingdom, and by default, my product and customer sales charts are just showing me the sales that I made in the United Kingdom over the last 28 days, which is just under £78,000. Now, again, if I look at the map visualization, I want to see where those sales were made. Now, I no longer need this country location information because I've filtered the information down to just look at the United Kingdom. So I'm going to get rid of that field. And I've got a field here called address. Now, this is one of the subtleties that I mentioned right at the beginning. This is a workaround that I've done in Power BI to accommodate the fact that my address information in Sage 50 is inconsistent. And by inconsistent, what I mean is, you know, maybe there's a county information, maybe there's not. Maybe the postal code is in address 3 on one line of information, and maybe it's in address 4 on another, and so on. So what address is, it's a field which is a concatenation of all of my Sage 50 addresses: address 1, address 2, address 3, address 4, address 5, and country code, all concatenated together into one field. And the reason this works, if you imagine using Google Maps or Bing Maps and you type in an address, it finds that address no problem. It doesn't need to think, okay, which is address 1, which is address 2, and so on. So this is what I've done. I've created a single address field in Microsoft Power BI that contains a concatenation of all of these. And I can just show you very briefly. I'll just go on to a second page just for cleanliness. I'll show you what that looks like. So if I have address 1, address 2, and so on, there's not much information in address 2, but actually what I have in the address field is a nice, neat concatenation of all the fields I have for that particular address in a nice structured way, as though I would write it for the postman. Okay, and this is what I'm throwing into Microsoft Power BI, which is then throwing it into Bing Maps and retrieving the point information, and it can do that pretty robustly on even some quite ropey data sets. So that's the big workaround that I'm doing to accommodate how to get around your inconsistent or incomplete address data. Now, if you want to know the formulae that I've used in terms of how to do that, the link is in the footer of this YouTube YouTube video. But included in this article are the formulas that I've used to create that single address field. And there are a couple of options depending on exactly what you want to do. There's a really simple option and a slightly more complicated option, but both work. So now if we go back to our mapping information, what we're displaying on this map are circles of information. The bigger the circle is, the bigger the point. The bigger the sales, the darker the circle, the higher the margin. And this is all over the last 28 days. And again, I can select individual ones. And that shows me the customer name, the sales value, and the products bought. Nice and interactive, just as you would expect within Microsoft Power BI. Now, what I want to show you now are a couple of other options. One of the problems with this is if my sales information starts getting really cluttered. I mean, this is sales over the last 28 days, and each point here represents an individual customer. And you can imagine if I'm trying to analyze sales over several thousand customers or so on, alternative visualizations are needed. And we're going to take a look at some of those alternative visualizations now. I want to jump now to take a look at the ArcGIS maps option for Power BI. And the first option within this is very similar to what we're looking at, but it has a couple of extra features that we can take a look at. So I click on this icon. Now, one of the things you might find about ArcGIS maps is it's very rich in functionality, but it's also really heavy on your browser. So I'm hoping this is rendering okay over the live YouTube stream. What you can see is by default, it's picked up a very similar visualization to the one I had in the standard Power BI map view. Again, where the shading is in proportion to the margin, the size of the circle is in proportion to the revenue. I can customize that. So instead of the default red color, I can change those symbol styles to look something close to what I had before. Right, let's choose those green options. Okay, and that shows me a similar kind of map view to the one I had before. But now what I want to show you is a nice little feature within the ArcGIS Maps option, which is a selection option. So I have a selection tool here on the right. I can select multiple locations. So if I want to zoom in on this particular area around London, I can just draw a square around that. And if you watch the customer information and the product information on the right, that will change to match the selection that I've made. So I can see just within this area, I can see the customers that have bought products from me in the last 28 days, and I can see the products that they have bought. And I can zoom in on different areas. And that's fully interactive. So that's one of the nice features that you get with ArcGIS maps. Again, this doesn't solve the problem if I've got lots and lots of points of data and it's really starting to get too cluttered. So one of the options I like within ArcGIS, and this is an option that is particularly useful if you can't use the filled map option within Power BI. And again, I'll come on to why that is quite tricky with Sage 50 data in a second. So I can go back to edit mode and I can change my map theme. So instead of this kind of size and shading option I have for my points of the map data, I can select a heat map as an option. And I think that's a really nice way of displaying your sales information where you've got a lot of clutter. You know, let's say, for example, there were thousands of customers there. I don't want to be looking at thousands of points on a map, but a heat map is a really nice way of doing that. And particularly if I can't use the filled map option, which we'll come on to take a look at in a minute. A third option that I particularly like in ArcGIS maps is it's useful if you're just trying to look at counts of information, which is this cluster option. It's not as rich in information, but it's nice and simple. And if you're trying to look at volumes of sales by geography or volumes of customers by geography, this is a nice option. And I can see on a simple map that in the last 28 days, I made sales in the London area to 10 customers, in the southwest corner there to 12 customers, in the Manchester area to 15 customers, and so on. And it's a very, very nice, simple, clear visualization. Now, the third option I want to come on and show you within Microsoft Power BI is a little bit more subtle, and it's the filled map option. And I'm going to change this visualization now to filled map. And you can see it's not showing a lot yet. And the reason for that is for the location information, I've just got that single row address line there. And again, for this filled map, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that country code filter off. Okay. And I'm going to add country info. Oh, hang on, sorry. I'm going to add country as a location information. Okay. So it's recognized that country field as a location. And I can see that I've made sales in the United Kingdom, Canada, and the United States. And it's shaded it by volume or by size of sales. So United States is shaded darker in this particular case. And what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to drill down within the country down to county level information. And in my customer addresses table here, I've got county. And I'm going to mention how I do this, how I prepare this data in a minute. And I'm going to bring that up under country. So it kind of acts as a drill down for the information. So what I can do now is I can, on my map view, I can select the turn on drill down option and just say click on the United Kingdom. And that now drills down and displays my sales information in the last 28 days in the United Kingdom by county. And if I want to see the actual sales by customer in a given county, what I can do is I can select, say, North Humberside. I can see in North Humberside, I made sales to 2 customers of just under £18,000 for these products listed in this table. Now, what I want to do, this all looks very simple. What I want to do is just explain a few subtleties here that I've skipped over in the presentation. The first is that if you look at these data elements here, address 1, address 2, you see a little globe beside them, okay? What that means is I've told Power BI that this holds location information. And the way to do that is very simple. If I select that address line there, I go to the modeling tab, data type is text, but data, if you go to the data category option, I'm presented with a number of different location categories. So in this particular case, it's my concatenated address. So I've just called it an address, okay, because that's what it is. But equally, if it was a city, I could call it a city or a continent or country, region, county, and so on. So this is where I tell Power BI something useful about my data that helps it find it. So if I go back to my original claim that if your address data in Sage 50 is good enough for the postman to deliver an invoice, what I mean is if you concatenate all the information you have for a given customer address into one field, which I've done here, I've called it address, and tell Power BI that it is an address, it will find that information on a map for you. But what it will do is it will find point information. Now, for the counties in the United Kingdom, what I've done is, in this particular data set, I was fortunate enough that address 4 in my data pretty well coincided to my county information. In fact, it did coincide to my county information. So I was able to rename that county, and I gave it a category of state or province, which is fine for Power BI to pick that up and display that at a county level. The subtlety around using Power BI for filled maps, though, comes at country level. And here's where I've done a little bit more of an engineering workaround, which may not be that easy for you. I mean, it's doable. It's doable if you're using Power BI desktop. But if you're just using the Power BI cloud service, it may be quite tricky for you to do this. But the country code information that comes up in Sage 50, or that is stored in Sage 50, is 2-digit alpha code for the countries. Now, Power BI needs the ISO 3-digit alpha code to understand that information as country information. So to enable that nice drill down that I have in this map view by country, I can go back up again, where I can see Canada, United States, and the United Kingdom, I do need to fix my country code information that's come from Sage 50 instead of 2 digits to 3 digits. And we can talk about that in a future video as to exactly how to do that. There are lookup tables that you can access via the web to do that for you. But that's what I've done to enable this drill down. So in summary, if you're using Sage 50 and you want to display your sales information on a map, firstly, I think it's an excellent idea, really for 2 reasons. One reason is that if you're wanting to engage the rest of your management team around your reports coming out of Sage 50, mapping can be an excellent way of doing this. It's something that a lot of people like to interact with and can be very engaging for certain audiences. So that's one reason why to do it. Another reason why to do it is actually to see your data from a different perspective. And Let me give you an example. I was looking at sales information over the last 28 days, and I might be happy thinking that those sales are up and my business is improving. And if I look at that data in a table, if I look at sales growth over the last 28 days compared with, say, the previous 28 days, I may be really happy. But what that data might mask is a regional variation. So say, for example, I had a new competitor that had become very active in the Southwest, and my sales were falling in that region. It may not be that obvious to me just looking at the sales data in pure tabular format, but on a map, I can see that straight away. So those are a couple of reasons why you may want to use mapping to display your Sage 50 sales data. So in summary, if your Sage 50 data is good enough to deliver a letter, sales invoice, or parcel to your customers, you can concatenate all of those fields for each customer address into a single field, mark it as an address type, and throw it to Power BI, and Power BI will find that point on a map for you, and you can display that information on a map. If you're wanting to display field maps and support drill down from country down to county, it does get a little bit more complicated. There are two things you need. You need to expand your two-digit country code information that comes from Sage 50 to an ISO 3-digit alpha code. And the other thing you need to make sure is you need to make sure that your county or region information is consistently stored within Sage 50 or somehow fixed as it comes into Power BI. If you can't do that and you still want that kind of aggregated macro view, if you're looking at thousands of customers or hundreds of customers and looking at individual points for each customer is just too unwieldy, then the Esri ArcGIS maps option with the customer heat map, I think, is a super option for you. Read more about this, take a look at the article in Accounting Web, and in that article I also have the formulas that I've used to create that single field address table.